In today's show, Mac Pro, what the hell is going on? The EU's designs on Apple, and our VR future. I'm iCaveDave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and if you want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. And if you want a shout out in the next video, hashtag notification squad down in the comments. 3 topics today, all from you guys, so let's get into it. First up, Rodgers asks, iCaveAnswers, can you discuss the future of the Mac Pro, when we'll get an Apple Silicon powered Mac Pro, or at least something with more power than the Mac Studio? Do you think Apple will build one last AMD GPU line, 7000 series? Okay, so the Mac Pro has been hugely controversial just recently. It looked very much like we were going to be getting it last year. We didn't. Apple themselves said,
with just one more product to go, Mac Pro. But that is for another day.
And that was at the end of the spring event when the Mac Studio came out. Everyone assumed they were going to be bringing it in the summer with the M2s.
Good morning and welcome to WWDC.
But I have a feeling that the reason we have this issue is because of what we've heard about ray tracing with GPUs in the iPhone 14 Pros. Apple was trying to put ray tracing into the GPUs that went into the A16 chips. They failed. There was massive issues with it. It was doing huge power draws. And so I think they had to basically push that back. They used the same GPU cores that we already had, but chucked a couple of extras in there so that they got the extra speed. So I think that's the big issue that we had. In terms of what the Mac Pro is actually going to be, though, that is the more interesting thing. And I think it's probably going to wait until the M3 generation when we could potentially have 3nm chips, and that could mean that we could get it as soon as
WWDC.
But I think it's more likely to come later in the year. I think we're probably going to get our M3s out around about WWDC. That will be your MacBook Air. The 15-inch MacBook Air, I'm pretty sure it's going to be coming there. I have seen that Mac Rumors is saying that they don't expect a new M3 MacBook Air because they think that the 15-inch is going to be coming in the spring and then they wouldn't replace it at WWDC. I just think that we're a little bit too ambitious on the timescales for that 15-inch. I think the 15-inch is more likely to come at WWDC alongside the M3. I've made a whole video on it, you can see it up there. But in terms of that Mac Pro, I think we're also unlikely to actually see this monolithic M3 Extreme chip that we've been hearing about in the past. I think it's far more likely that Apple will put multiple Maxes, maybe 4 of those, or 2 Ultras. I think maybe they've had issues with producing the Ultra chips because they're so big and they need to have everything working well in order to be able to use that chip. So I think Apple is probably looking along the lines of going to multiple M3 Max chips potentially onto the die and basically doing kind of a chiplet design with the smaller individual pieces of silicon. That way they can pick and choose the bits that have come out really well and sort of bin the rest of it. In terms of the design, we've been talking for a long time about the fact that I don't think it needs to be in a case the size of the current Mac Pro. Apple Silicon is far better in terms of power management, in terms of cooling, in terms of all of that sort of thing. It uses so much less power than the x86 stuff that we had in the past. So my thoughts, having seen the Mac Studio in person in the Apple Store, is that it's actually going to be a taller version of that. And we did actually do some renders way back with SAD, which showed a kind of cube style Mac Pro. Still got the venting on the front in the renders that we did. I think that's probably going to go away. I think it's more likely to have the smaller kind of pinhole vents that we see in the Mac Studio, like we get with the Mac Minis, where the inlets are at the base, I think, and then it exhausts out through the back. That's my thought. Let me know if you think it's going to be any different to that. I do think there's going to be maybe some PCIe expandability, or Apple's own proprietary one, more likely, because they don't like everyone using their own stuff. However, I think they might control it a little bit closer, and potentially you get a PCIe style port where you can put in Apple approved cards for either expanded storage, input output for audio, but I don't think we're going to see like expandable RAM, expandable graphics. I think it's all going to be kind of built into the SoC card, if you like, when you buy it. What I do think would be a great idea though is if Apple allowed you to use multiple Mac Pros or Mac Studios or whatever it might be called at that point over a network to distribute your processing. So basically being able to send different tasks off to other systems, so you could basically have a server block made up of multiple smaller Mac Pros. And next up, Team Kinetix asks iCaveAnswers, if the EU continues to mandate the features and functionality that smartphones must or must not have, such as USB-C, sideloading of apps, and potentially being more easily user-repairable, do you think that Apple might start to make different devices for the European market versus the rest of the world, or possibly pull out of Europe altogether? Or do you think it's not as big of an issue as tech YouTubers would have us believe? Now, I certainly don't think that Apple's going to be pulling out of Europe. That is almost off the table. There's too much business in Europe. There's too many developers based here, even, you know, not even just in the UK, which I guess whether we still qualify as Europe for these laws or not, I don't know. I don't see them making different versions. There might be some different App Store rules and things like that, but I think it's just going to make things so complex. I think Apple is more than likely going to go down the route of making it the same across the world, because, let's be honest, it's not going to be that long before the US follows suit with Europe and mandates these same things with USB-C charging, which is something they've already been looking at, having a universal charger, and also with the multiple app stores. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not 100% convinced that Apple will even go to USB-C. I think there is a decent possibility that they will just go, yeah, we'll comply with the laws. You can only charge it with MagSafe now, which is probably not the best plan for Apple. The backlash would be huge. It's not like you can build accessories in the same way that you could with Lightning to take advantage of microphones over MagSafe, or, you know, that kind of thing. So that seems unlikely to me, but I've certainly heard rumours of that from people like Marquez and Dave2D. Still, I don't think there will, but I do think there's a possibility. But in terms of the rest of the stuff, I do think that Apple is going to go down the route of just making it open for everyone in that way. I think they will make it difficult for people. But as I've said in my whole video on this European Markets Act, I don't think it's the right move. I don't think Europe is making a good call here. I don't think they've taken into account the actual issues that it could cause. But there we go. Everyone else seems to disagree with me. And our final question comes from David Black. iCave answers, 2023 is likely to bring us the first Apple AR/VR headset, but greater interest perhaps is that we may get a glimpse of Apple's vision for the AppleVerse. What do you think the AppleVerse might look like, and how might it function? And what do you think it means for Apple's future, given that the company has defined our digital lives at important stages: PCs, mobile, wearables, Apple Silicon, etc., in computing's ongoing evolution? Thanks for this great year-end review of Apple's 2022 and all that you do for the fellow travelers in Is It Soon the Apple? So yeah, this is something that we were expecting, earlier last year to be coming in perhaps January, when Apple would have kind of put it out there at the same time of year that they originally announced the first iPhone. That was a January announcement and went on sale around June. I think this year it seems that the rumour mill is saying it's going to be a little bit later in the year. So I think we'll probably get our first look at it.
WWDC.
That makes the most sense anyway, for developers to get their hands on it, just like with Apple Silicon. So there'll be a developer transition kit, there'll be some sort of hardware that developers can use, and then perhaps November time it goes on general sale, or they do what they did with the Apple Watch. They announce it just before Christmas and say this is going to be on sale just after Christmas. And yes, you would think they're missing out on a huge amount of holiday sales. However, this is going to be quite expensive. And really the reason that they would put it out as an announcement before Christmas, even if it's not on sale, is it's not cannibalizing any of their own products. It's simply stopping people from buying competitor products that would then stop them from buying the Apple one if it was announced just after Christmas. So I think that is probably what we're going to see. We'll find out a lot about it at WWDC. We'll see what the frameworks look like. We'll see what the AppleVerse itself looks like, what Reality OS or XR OS or whatever they're going to call it looks like, and then we'll see a little bit more. I don't know how it's going to change our lives. I don't know if Apple is going to be able to make it affordable enough that a big enough proportion of people will have it. Apple Watch didn't have a huge uptake when it first came out, and that was only at $400. The iPad had a pretty big uptake when it first came out. That was at $400, and that was like their biggest release ever of a new product line. But this is very different. This is something that I think they need to put out at something like WWDC, so that the technology gets out there, so that developers start kind of talking about what this is capable of and how this is going to work, and that builds the demand for it when it comes later in the year. It's very exciting to see what's going to happen, and I wonder if we're going to have a year of rumours like we did in 2020 when we were talking about the A14 powered MacBook. I think this is going to have something along the lines of an M3 inside it, or maybe even dual M3s to run those displays. We're talking an 8K display plus a couple of 4K displays per eye, I think, something like that. And it's just a huge amount of displays and graphics and pixels to be able to push. So this thing is going to be a beast. And 3nm will make a big difference in terms of how much battery you need to keep it running for a reasonable length of time too. So time will tell. But if you've got a question you want to ask in a future show, hit me up down in the comment section, #iCaveAnswers. Don't forget Notification Squad. If you want to join my Notification Squad, you will get a shout out if you let me know down in the comments too. Thanks to the Patreons, and we will see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.